everyone. We are back again for some week 4 quarterback analysis of DraftKings. I got my buddy Jason here. As always, you can follow us on Twitter. We will help you with your fantasy questions unless you're mean, and then we won't help you. But actually, I'll probably still help you, so you can probably just say whatever you want.
We're obligated.
Yeah, no, you can say whatever you want. But if you like the videos that we're doing and you like the information we're providing, please give us a like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's not much to ask. It's free. Please just do that. Thank you. Anyhow, getting into some cash game options. Cam Newton looking like a pretty good option this week, huh?
I would take myself against the Atlanta Falcons in cash games at this point. I mean, they just look bad. Obviously, you look at secondary, there is Desmond Trufant, who really hasn't been all that great. You look at, I think the only thing that's really against Carolina here is that they're on the road, which really isn't that big of a thing because they still have a team total rate around 27. Drew Brees, Jameis Winston, Derek Carr have all lit up Atlanta through the first 3 weeks. Atlanta's allowing nearly 28 DK points per game to quarterbacks so far this season. You look at Newton, I think with the injury to Jonathan Stewart, he's going to be forced to really carry a lot of this offense because I don't think there's going to really be much of a run game. So I think there's going to be a lot of success through the air and on the ground. I think obviously the floor, we always really know the floor is there with Newton. And I think that ceiling is really tremendous. I think GPPs, it's going to be really tough to kind of not have an Olsen, Newton, or Benjamin type stack in there because there's just a ton of upside against the secondary and defense.
Did we decide what position you'd play if you were on the NFL field? Quarterback, running back, flanker, receiving down tight end? I could see you in like a Jordan Reed or Kobe Fleener type role.
I think I'm too small. I see myself, I'm going to go back a little bit. I'm Brandon Stokely. I think that's more my role.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I see that. A little Adam Humphries. Yeah.
Yeah. If we want to be relevant, 2016 Adam Humphries, Wes Welker type. I'm only 5'9", so give me those slot, across the middle. I'll take those hits all day.
I'd be like a really good Chan Gailey or like like a ref that gets run over. You know what I mean?
I was thinking more Sebastian Janikowski, but okay.
Oh,
sure.
There you go. Okay. I am a lefty, so yeah, that would be perfect. All right. Phillip Rivers, your other cash game mention here. Only 6,900. Obviously Cam, the nice price, but I think Rivers against this Saints team, I mean, it's just so gross.
Yeah, I mean, you look here, the Saints team on a shortened week on the road in San Diego. Football Outsiders has them as the pass defense. They're ranked 27th. We know they're bad. I like a lot of Chargers this week. I'm not necessarily really going after the wide receivers. I think I'm just more going at Phillip Rivers. I like Melvin Gordon as well. I think they actually can pair well together. I don't mind that. He's a guy who just usually hovers around that 20-point mark. He's been solid this year, averaging over 250 passing yards per game. I just look at the Saints secondary, and I think overall they're certainly beatable, especially at home. 29 team total there for San Diego. They're expecting some points. As you mentioned, the price tag is 6,900, cheaper than Newton by about 1,000. And I think if you need that 1,000, I don't really mind going down the Rivers. I still think Cam is truly the elite number one this week. But Rivers overall, I think anyone against the Saints at this point just seems like an easy cash game play.
Yeah, definitely agree. You threw someone in the GPPs, as did Spencer on the FanDuel, which is Kirk Cousins. Now, I think we're all in the same page here. Borderline cash against the Browns, right?
Yeah, I think so. All these guys here that I list could be borderline cash plays. I mean, even Stafford, who we'll talk about next, could be cash. But it certainly is, especially here on DraftKings at 6,500. You threw out a tweet the other day about Kirk Cousins and his struggle inside the red zone. That's eventually going to turn around. He's going to figure some things out. Take a look here. I mean, averaging 42 pass attempts per game so far this season. The defense hasn't been good. The run game really hasn't been good. He's going to have to throw. I still think even if they hit that total, it's going to be through the air. I can't see a lot of it coming on the ground. Cleveland, pretty middle of the road. You look at Cousins at home, he is significantly better at home. Averaged 24 DK points last year combined compared to 17 at home. It's really hard not to like him and kind of pair him with a Jordan Reed. If Deshaun Jackson sits, pair him with a Jamison Crowder, and kind of use those guys because it is a cheap stack. And I think, as you mentioned, this Browns secondary is just it really is one to target.
Yeah, again, 7 of 23 in terms of red zone attempts right now with 2 interceptions and 1 touchdown. So on the outset of that, you kind of look at that for what it is. It's horrible, awful, disgraceful, pathetic, tragic, and makes me want to punch a baby sometimes, probably. But as I've learned with yards per carry over the last few years, some efficiency stats take a lot longer to stabilize than you'd think. And I think this is one of those times where you look at the volume as a more important indicator than the actual efficiency right now. 23 red zone passing attempts is second in the NFL right now. Facing a Browns defense at only 6,500 on DK, has great options in the passing game of Jordan Reed, Deshaun Jackson. I think those are great stacking options. You love the team total, 26 and a quarter. This Browns teammate Jarvis Landry and the Dolphins passing game look like, top 5 in the league, which I like Landry and Devontae Parker, but certainly not top 5. And I just think Cousins is a great option in all formats. And I think his numbers are actually positive indicators instead of, looking at them and saying he's played bad. It's still positive in terms of fantasy production.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, we know what Cousins can do, and Cousins had a good week last week. I think overall, this week should be a little bit different in terms of game flow, but I just still think that offense is really structured around the passing game. I think if they're hitting that total, I don't see Chris Thompson and Matt Jones being a part of it.
Certainly. Yeah, no, I don't either. I mean, maybe we see Chris Thompson get involved from like a pass from Kirk Cousins and then a touchdown, and there you go. You mentioned Matthew Stafford already, so let's talk about him next. 7,300. Is the price a factor in putting him in GPPs compared to Cam? Is that kind of how you looked at that?
That's how I looked at it, because, I mean, you go over to FanDuel, Stafford is a cash game play there because he is a little bit different price, but 500 more you can get Cam Newton. I think I'd rather go that route. I love Stafford here this week. I mean, once again, he's another guy who's going to have 40 pass attempts per game. Chicago ranks 26 in pass defense per Football Outsiders so far this season. And overall, I mean, there's a lot of weapons around Stafford. There really is. Golden Tate, Anquan Bolden, Eric Ebron, Marvin Jones, who's been fantastic to start the year. Go back to last year. I mean, obviously 2 games, threw for 703 yards and 7 touchdowns against Chicago. I know one of those games was an overtime game, but both games he really came through clutch. I'm curious to see what his ownership is going to be. He was pretty low in last week, which was a little bit surprising. I think he'll come up a little bit. I think that price range between Rivers, between Cam Newton might drop him down a little bit, or at least I'm hoping so. I just look at this and I think, man, it's hard to kind of fade Stafford at this point. I like this Lions offense a lot.
So this actually reminds me of Ahmad Bradshaw and Andrew Luck a few years ago, where in cash games, I want to insulate my Matthew Stafford exposure with Theo Riddick just because he's going to be the main running back, but he's also in on passing downs. But you don't want to risk, if Theo Riddick and Dwayne Washington go off, you just don't want to risk losing all of that production. So if you play cash games with Stafford, you obviously want to get Marvin Jones in there, but I think you want to get Theo Riddick in there too for a base, just in case, he gets 2 goal line rushing touchdowns. As far as Dwayne Washington, I think you can look at him in tournaments, a deep tournament guy, but I think he's very interesting in terms of getting maybe 2 long touchdowns. Superb athlete, just super raw. If he gets 10 to 15 carries, I could honestly see him getting 100 yards in this range of outcomes because this Bears team has just rolled over already. And I mean, they lost their top cover corner. They're going to be struggling. Their defenders are just going to be flailing all over the field. It's going to be a mess. So I would definitely try to insulate a little bit of Stafford here.
Yeah, I think Lions exposure is certainly what you need for this weekend. I think with that matchup and just overall that offense and what they're doing right now,
Mhm.
it's definitely none of them are must plays, but I think in terms of getting at least some exposure is where you want to look at that.
Absolutely.
So,
Brian Hoyer's last guy you mentioned here. I think we're all pretty excited about this matchup here against the Lions, who haven't really done much. Hoyer min price. That's really the appeal here, right?
5K. There's been two teams this year who have allowed 10 passing touchdowns already. That's Detroit and that's Atlanta. So Cam Newton gets Atlanta. Brian Hoyer gets Lions team at bare min. You can pair Kevin White with him, and it costs about 8,700, I believe, for both of those guys if you wanted to go that route.
Yeah.
I like Alshon Jeffrey as well, who you can kind of pair with Zach Miller. There's a lot of Bears options to kind of exploit here because you look at this Lions offense, both against the run and the pass, they're bad. If you played last year, you kind of know Brian Hoyer, what he stands for. 200 yards, 2 touchdowns is kind of what he can give you. Through 19 touchdowns in 11 games last year, averaged 16.2 points per game. Bare minimum, it's really hard to get away from that. I think he's an intriguing cash game guy if you want to kind of really stack around him. Same thing with GPPs because you can stack and go a lot of different ways elsewhere to kind of, he's not necessarily going to be contrarian. I think you make your contrarian moves with other guys.
You know what's funny? And I just thought of this. How about a little Brian Hoyer, DeAndre Hopkins stack for old times? Let's stack them even though they're not on the same team anymore.
I love Hopkins this week.
Yeah, I think that I think that's where we're going here. Hoyer Hopkins stack for the win. Let's do it. Yeah. 5K just opens up so much. So gotta love this.
Yep.
So I think that's the main review here. I'd imagine this is where most of the ownership is. I don't think we're going to be sneaking much by. You might get a little lower ownership on Kirk Cousins just because of those efficiency stats and people kind of falling for that, fake, conclusions for fantasy purposes. But other than that, I think all these guys are going to be the chalk as well.
Yeah, I think so. And the fact that there's a London game, the fact that they take away the Monday night, it does take away a couple quarterbacks for this week. And you really are not sneaking anything really by this week.
Right.
I think if you wanted to, I think the game you might want to look to do it is either on both sides is Baltimore, Oakland. I think both those quarterbacks could be the lowest owned in terms of guys because everywhere else, maybe a Carson Palmer, you can maybe roll the dice with him. But outside of that, I think overall you're kind of looking at those guys and making contrarian moves elsewhere.
And I think in tournaments we've become accustomed to, hating the chalk. But, sometimes the chalk is just the right play. And I just think that's the case this week. So hopefully this helps with your lineup building. As always, check out Daily Fantasy Cafe for all our optimizer tools and other good content there. Again, if you like our YouTube channel, give us a like on this video and subscribe. And we'll be here all season. So check us out in week 5. We'll be back. Thanks for tuning in.